It is nearly midnight. The house is completely silent. You stand alone in the dark kitchen. You pull open the heavy refrigerator door. The cold, harsh light hits your tired face. You carefully scan the exact same shelves. Absolutely nothing has changed since the last time. You let out a heavy sigh. You push the door shut. Exactly 10 minutes pass. You walk right back. You open it again. You stare blankly at the exact same mustard jar. You feel incredibly foolish. A heavy wave of intense guilt violently washes over you. You think you have absolutely zero self-control. You ruthlessly label yourself as a pathetic emotional eater. You assume your personal willpower is completely broken. Society constantly tells you that you lack basic adult discipline. You think you are desperately searching for cheap junk food just to numb your own pathetic feelings. Stop. You are completely wrong about this action. This repetitive cycle is not a shameful sign of weakness. You are not losing a pathetic battle against your own daily appetite. By the exact end of this video, you will finally understand the truth. This embarrassing late-night habit is actually a brilliant biological algorithm. Science formally identifies this repetitive behavior as a stress-induced foraging loop. But it is absolutely not a modern psychological eating disorder. It is a highly aggressive, historically proven survival tactic. You just unknowingly executed a vital neurochemical search. Your daily cortisol levels dangerously spiked. Your starving dopamine receptors forcefully demanded an immediate rescue operation. Do you truly think this proves your personal discipline is entirely shattered? This is exactly where the modern wellness industry completely manipulates you. They aggressively sell you strict dietary rules. They tell you to simply drink a glass of water. But your central nervous system completely ignores their toxic productivity advice. It only cares about stabilizing a severe neurological crisis. Your brain is actively executing a desperate, magnificent self-soothing maneuver. It forcefully compels you to seek instant chemical rewards. You open that heavy door repeatedly because your physical body is running a harsh Ice Age software. Your ancient brain is aggressively defending you against a massive, invisible wave of modern psychological stress. It has forcibly activated a deeply primal scavenging mode. This specific mechanism is brilliantly designed to prevent a catastrophic mental collapse. Your brain aggressively prioritizes immediate neurochemical relief over any modern aesthetic goals. You're standing safely in a comfortable, modern kitchen, but your terrified nervous system is actively surviving a brutal winter famine. It heavily prefers to make you look temporarily gluttonous. It will willingly endure the intense personal shame strictly to secure your fragile mental stability. The mindless fridge stare is not a sad sign of a failing willpower. It is an impenetrable defensive loop operating flawlessly. Your physical body is forcefully rebelling against a high-anxiety era. You are not slowly losing your mind to random food cravings. Your biological hardware is just aggressively hunting for absolute safety. You aggressively interrogate yourself about this pathetic midnight ritual. You peel back the heavy layers of your own dietary guilt. Do you perform this exact humiliating walk because you lack basic self-control? No. Do you desperately stare at the cold shelves because you are completely lazy? Incorrect. Do you suffer from this loop because your personal willpower is fundamentally broken? Completely wrong. But this is exactly where the modern diet industry completely deceives you. They viciously label your involuntary pacing as a toxic lack of discipline. Society demands absolute perfection in your daily eating habits. You falsely believe you must rigidly control your caloric intake 24 hours a day. But this relentless pursuit of nutritional perfection is a deadly neurotoxin. From the outside, you simply look like a highly undisciplined individual, desperately craving a midnight snack. You look completely out of control. But underneath your skull, a magnificent neurochemical intervention is actively taking place. In 2018, neurobiologists at the Max Planck Institute of Metabolism thoroughly mapped this exact state of profound biological foraging. The scientific verdict is an absolute revelation. Your nervous system is actively preventing a catastrophic biological crash. Your brain is equipped with a highly sophisticated chemical reward center. It is heavily regulated by the striatum and the deep dopamine system. When you sit in a highly stressful modern environment for hours, your brain does not passively absorb the anxiety. It actively calculates the sheer crushing volume of your daily cortisol spikes. Every single unread email, every financial worry, every subtle workplace tension requires massive metabolic energy to process. When this massive stress stream violently exceeds your neurological bandwidth, your brain takes immediate executive action. It forcibly demands an instant, high-yield chemical countermeasure. Your primal brain classifies a highly stressful Tuesday not as a mere inconvenience, but as a severe neurotoxic threat. From a purely alien perspective, forcing your fragile nervous system to process constant anxiety is a deeply unnatural poison. Therefore, your survival mechanism deliberately pulls the internal emergency lever. It initiates a clinical state of neurochemical foraging. The sudden urge to walk towards the kitchen is instantly deployed as a brilliant defensive shield. Your physical body refuses to let you burn your own neural pathways to the ground. It aggressively hijacks your consciousness to enforce a mandatory, non-negotiable dopamine hunt. Your hyperactive survival mechanism captures this overwhelming emotional input, violently upgrading it to a critical emergency. The refrigerator is not just a metal food storage unit. To your ancient brain, it is a highly guaranteed dopamine dispenser. If we perfectly isolate the environmental variable, your biological hardware is performing an absolute miracle of self-preservation. If you completely remove the crushing weight of modern diet culture, your body functions with absolute perfection. No healthy brain can flawlessly ignore severe chronic stress because it is constantly flooded with chemical alarms. Your brain is completely normal. It is absolutely inevitable that your exhausted cognitive centers will initiate this massive foraging sequence. You are not a defective eater failing at basic human discipline. You are an incredibly sophisticated organism executing a flawless neurochemical protocol. But this temporary chemical hunt is only the shallow surface. What your dopamine-starved nervous system is secretly orchestrating behind this repetitive kitchen walk is infinitely more majestic. Why does a highly rational human being repeatedly stare into a cold, illuminated metal box, expecting a sudden miracle? To understand this profound paradox, we must abruptly rip you out of your quiet, modern kitchen and drop you directly into a brutal, unforgiving landscape 300,000 years ago. In that terrifying prehistoric epic, the ultimate invisible enemy was not an overdue credit card, a difficult corporate manager, or the crushing pressure of modern productivity. The real threat was the agonizing, slow brutality of absolute winter famine. Your ancient ancestors survived in extremely harsh, resource-scarce environments. They possessed a profoundly powerful biological radar. This radar was strictly programmed to hunt for dense, immediate caloric energy. When the bitter cold descended, the primitive tribe experienced a massive surge in cortisol. This stress hormone was not a sign of modern anxiety. It was a violent, screaming command from the nervous system. It strictly demanded that the body must immediately forage to survive the freezing darkness. Missing a critical opportunity to consume energy meant absolute biological death. Fast forward to this exact present moment. Your physical biological hardware has not upgraded a single line of its primary defensive code. It is still aggressively running that exact same 3 million-year-old foraging software deep inside your skull. However, the modern environment has forcefully injected a terrifying new enemy. We call it chronic psychological burnout. Society ruthlessly demands that you endure severe mental exhaustion. It violently forces you to simultaneously process endless emotional conflicts, swallow modern anxieties, and navigate financial fears without taking a single break. The sheer, overwhelming volume of this psychological garbage aggressively bombarding your cerebral cortex is mathematically impossible to sustain. You are violently forcing a fragile, Paleolithic brain to function as a tireless emotional sponge. Therefore, your nervous system is literally drowning in an invisible, relentless tsunami of cognitive starvation. You are not a lazy, gluttonous participant in a modern dietary failure. Biologically speaking, you are a deeply exhausted hunter-gatherer, desperately scavenging a frozen tundra to survive a raging internal emotional blizzard. When your nervous system finally detects the terrifying overload of a chaotic day, your primal radar system violently hijacks your conscious, logical mind. It instantly, forcefully severs the neural connection to your advanced prefrontal cortex. It aggressively plunges your entire waking consciousness into a deep, protective foraging trance in a fraction of a millisecond. It desperately commands your physical legs to walk toward the primary food source. It wipes your overloaded working memory totally clean. It completely shuts down your rational dietary goals. It commands your muscles to repeatedly pull that heavy door. Every single time your tired vision scans those exact same illuminated shelves, your body is executing a flawless, historically proven preservation protocol. Every single time you mistakenly search for a completely familiar jar, your highly intelligent nervous system is actively saving you from starving to death in a toxic emotional winter. Every single time you feel that embarrassing midnight urge, your exhausted dopamine system is fiercely pulling the ultimate biological emergency brake. You think your brain is fundamentally broken because you open a fridge 5 times? This is the exact part where modern diet culture has entirely misunderstood the profound, majestic brilliance of human anatomy. What society carelessly labels as a pathetic, pathological lack of willpower is actually a magnificent biological triumph. Your hypersensitive neural pathways are not failing, degrading, or breaking down at all. They are aggressively, brilliantly adapting to keep you perfectly intact in a profoundly unnatural, hyper-demanding ecosystem. Your body is forcefully establishing an impenetrable biological fortress to strictly ensure you never suffer permanent cognitive damage in this stressful era. Mindless midnight foraging is not a modern psychological sickness. It is an evolutionary masterpiece hiding in plain sight. It is the majestic, silent echo of your ancestors forcefully pulling you toward the fire, strictly to keep your fragile mind perfectly alive. You brutally punish yourself for this pathetic midnight loop. You stand shivering in the cold glow of the refrigerator light. You are desperately holding a meaningless jar of pickles. You deeply feel the crushing weight of nutritional failure bearing down heavily upon your tense shoulders. You assume everyone else possesses flawless self-discipline. You think they see a weak, emotionally unstable consumer. You assume you lack the basic human willpower to simply close a metal door. You relentlessly label yourself as a gluttonous loser, a highly impulsive eater, and a complete dietary failure. You firmly believe you are intentionally destroying your own physical health. You think you are severely damaging your fitness goals. You fear allowing a selfish neurochemical glitch to completely ruin your personal progress. You aggressively convince yourself to constantly perform as a perfect wellness machine. You believe you must always eat clean. You must endlessly demonstrate rigid control in this flawlessly polished, highly judgmental, modern society. But no. Your nervous system just initiated a supreme lockdown. The threat was real. You are entirely safe. The profound truth is that society has maliciously constructed a deeply toxic illusion of seamless, infinite self-regulation. We blindly demand that a fragile biological organism remains perfectly disciplined. We expect it to be endlessly rational and constantly resistant to stress 24 hours a day. Meanwhile, it is actively processing thousands of agonizing emotional micro-traumas. When your body physically forces you toward the kitchen, it is violently breaking a heavy illusion. It shatters the exhausting expectations of this toxic dietary panopticon. Your overprotective striatum is absolutely not ruining your health. It is desperately attempting to negotiate the impossible, soul-crushing demands of this high-anxiety modern ecosystem. It physically forces you to completely surrender to a simple, physical reward. This happens strictly so you can momentarily survive the agonizing buildup of chronic psychological burnout. Furthermore, let us apply a fair, brutally honest valuation to your silent midnight humiliation. You are absolutely terrified that you are uniquely broken, secretly ashamed of your clumsy, frantic pantry searching. You truly think your midnight snacking is permanently recorded as a dark stain on your personal moral character. But the neurological reality is far more forgiving, and it is deeply liberating. The fragile working memory of the flawless fitness influencers you envy is already completely overflowing. It is drowning in their own exhausting cortisol spikes. They suffer from their own agonizing bodily insecurities and their own hidden, silent foraging loops. Behind closed doors, their overloaded hippocampi are secretly driving them toward the exact same illuminated shelves. They do this strictly to make room for their own personal survival calculations. You are not a unique failure in a world of perfect health robots. Your microscopic dietary glitch is an entirely universal human mechanism. All of that immense societal pressure and all of that paralyzing fear of harsh judgment instantly evaporates. That ruthless internal self-abuse completely dissolves under the cold, precise lens of modern neurobiology. You ruthlessly force your fragile body to endlessly fast and to maintain intense caloric restriction. You project absolute nutritional perfection, while your internal nervous system is literally catching on fire. The heavy blast doors drop. The power grid fails. You are perfectly okay. You cannot uninstall a 3 million-year-old foraging algorithm. The invisible psychological winter of the modern world will not suddenly end. You will inevitably stand in front of that illuminated metal box again. Your tired hand will automatically reach for that heavy handle in the dark. The cold air will rush over your exhausted face. You will feel that familiar toxic wave of dietary shame trying to surface. You will be tempted to ruthlessly curse your own fragile willpower. But you now possess the profound neurochemical truth of your own biology. You finally understand the silent prehistoric hunter surviving inside your skull. This exhausted nervous system is absolutely not your gluttonous enemy. It is a deeply devoted guardian actively shielding your fragile sanity. It deliberately builds a neurochemical fire to warm your freezing emotional core. It willingly sacrifices your aesthetic, dietary goals for your absolute biological stability. It forces a sudden dopamine hunt rather than risking total psychological collapse. Therefore, you must stop fighting your own strict biological defense mechanisms. You must stop mourning the loss of a flawless nutritional identity. You are not a tireless aesthetic machine built for endless caloric restriction. You are a profoundly sensitive organism requiring frequent moments of chemical comfort. The next time your mind abruptly pulls the internal survival lever, do not panic over your sudden lack of dietary discipline. Do not silently condemn yourself as a highly impulsive human being. Do not attempt to forcefully drag your hungry consciousness back to a rigid plan. Allow the sudden heavy craving to simply exist without fear. Accept the neurochemical surge without applying any toxic moral judgment. Take a slow and deliberate breath inside your temporary midnight sanctuary. Appreciate the thick biological blast doors protecting your fragile emotional state. Remind yourself that constant nutritional perfection is a completely unnatural expectation. You have the sovereign biological right to temporarily seek comfort in the dark. You have the absolute right to secure a sudden burst of dopamine. You are entirely allowed to forage for safety in a hyperactive world. You are fully allowed to drop the heavy burden of modern wellness. You are allowed to exist as a beautifully flawed human being. The mindless midnight stare is a sacred act of extreme self-preservation. This brilliant nervous system is aggressively defending your precious internal peace. Thank it for the warm fire.